guidance and wisdom. Please help us make the best decisions that will help move Haltom City forward towards our motto, proud and progressive. Please keep mindful our troops overseas and bring them all home safe to their families. In your name we pray. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on the agenda tonight is a proclamation. Since September is National Alcohol and Drug Addiction Recovery Month in Tarrant County, it's my privilege tonight to present this plaque to Ms. Ruby Eisler. Ms. Eisler, will you please join me at the podium? Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
I'd like to read this, present it to you, and if you have comments you'd like to make to the audience, you'll have a few minutes after I make the presentation to do that.
Okay.
Whereas substance abuse is a major public health problem that affects millions of Americans of all ages, of all races and ethnic backgrounds in all communities, and is a huge medical, societal, and an economic cost, and whereas substance abuse is a treatable disease and treatment of addiction is as successful as the treatment of other chronic diseases, and whereas acknowledging September 2003 offers an opportunity to educate the public and policymakers about the effectiveness of treatment, both financial and societal, and whereas the United States Department of Health and Human Services, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration Center for Substance Abuse Treatment, along with the Office of the National Drug Control Policy and the Tarrant County Challenge Incorporated and its coalition members, invites all residents of Tarrant County to participate in National Alcohol and Drug Addiction Recovery Month. Now, I therefore, Calvin White, Mayor of the City of Haltom City, and on behalf of the entire council, do hereby commend and recognize Tarrant County Challenge and its coalition members for their work in the area of alcohol and drug addiction recovery, and proclaim September 2003 as National Alcohol and Drug Addiction Recovery Month in Tarrant County. Ms. Eisler.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to thank the City of Haltom and everyone here for this. For 14 years, we have nationally recognized September as Recovery Month, but I have worked at Tarrant Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse for, let me see, I'm 25, 15, 16, about 16 years, and ever since I've been there, Haltom City has had prevention education from our agency in their schools. Proud and progressive is a great motto, because we have been out here ever since we have had prevention education. We've been in the Haltom City School District. My children graduated from Haltom, and we had prevention education when they were going to school, and they graduated in the 80s. So Haltom City has always recognized substance abuse as a problem, but a problem that can be overcome. So on behalf of the recovery community and the treatment community, we thank you.
We move now to the consent agenda, which consists of items number 1 through 9, and we're adding item number 13 and 14 if you're looking at your agenda and keeping score. Okay, we have a couple of conflicts of interest. Councilmember Fowler has a conflict on item number 4. When he votes on the motion in a moment, it will reflect his vote on every other item except item number 4. Councilmember Bransom has a conflict on item 13 and 14, and they both have filed their conflict of interest affidavits. And so Likewise, Councilmember Bransom's vote will be on all items other than item number 13 and 14. That having been said, I'm ready now for a motion that allows us to enact all of these items in one motion because they're considered to be self-explanatory. Councilmember Avery.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion we approve the consent agenda with the inclusion of agenda item number 13 and 14. This motion is also to approve the issuance of certificates of obligation in the amount of $3.85 million to be awarded for the road bid submitted by First Southwest Company with a true interest cost of 4.558%.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Councilmember Hurley.
That's for second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, if you will, register your vote. And that passes by unanimous vote. Okay, having addressed those items, the next portion of our agenda is devoted to visitors and citizens forum. And this time is set aside for any person having business before the council that is not scheduled on the agenda. We have two speakers' request cards handed in tonight. And to those who will be speaking, I want to remind you that all comments must be directed toward the presiding officer rather than to an individual council member or staff. Each person who speaks must limit comments to the subject matter listed on the speaker's request form and must refrain from personal attacks toward any individual. The first of these appearance before the City Council to speak on the subject of senior citizen, Mr. Larry Francis. Mr. Francis, if you'll come forward to the podium, give us your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes, please.
Hi, Larry Francis, live at 3509 Haltom City. And I was trying to bring up, we got some problems with various things in Haltom City. First is senior citizens. The Tarrant County Appraisal District, they raised the value of the houses. The average in Haltom City is $7,000, causing the increase of taxes even more than we received on our home city exemption. So this killed our exemption that we had in May. And some of the other problems we have is, just say for instance on this one, we had 2/3 of people that voted on this senior citizens. So I'm just asking, one of these days it's going to happen, but this election is going to come up here shortly, starting off Thursday. Well, I believe it's going to be the 13th of September. And we're just asking you if y'all at the Haltom City Council would do something right and vote for us, yes. And quit blaming senior citizens for the conflict of maybe the loss of revenue coming in Haltom City. The next one is we have streets that need to be repaired. They've got some of these roller coasters, rough streets. And I said something to the public work director somewhere around 2 days ago, and I shouldn't have to mention this to him about various things in Haltom City. We're paying taxes, but this money is not going to fixing the streets. It's fixing new streets. Why can't the old streets be fixed also? We have different priorities in Haltom City. Why? If people know the right person, they can get anything done. I was driving around this past week, and I saw Haltom City workers fixing a short street between Nadine and Layton Avenue, curb and gutter. And one of our people that is conflict here in the City Council has some relation over there, and this is not on the agenda to get it done. And they just put a curb and gutter and a driveway in there. It was fixed. I drove over here last week. Sunday it was fixed. But I can't understand how come they got priorities that we have to go through various steps. And someone's bypassing these steps that we go through. The people in Haltom City should do things for everybody, but I notice it doesn't always work this way. We've got cliques. As our budget is sick, we should be careful with our citizen money. Senior citizen hurting. I notice y'all dropped a big bomb on us. Water, sewer rates are going up. Why don't y'all do it gradually? Y'all had a letter in this newsletter that says Haltom City must consider the water sewer operation as a business. It is irresponsible and contrary to the city borrowing agreement to avoid recovering the true cost. Our council people should have taken care of this in 1998 and got it gradually but they didn't do it. And y'all was saying something about the charter election. I don't think we need it. It's the same stuff 2 years ago, over and over. I think it's for selfish gain, nothing for us, just them. Now, some of y'all had a list of these here streets here. I saw the city manager had one a while ago. I have 14 streets that I run across here in Haltom City. They're rough as a cob. Say, for instance, one of them, it's real close to where I live by the recreation center. It's on Jean Lane. It's from Swan to Broadway. You can't do about 20 miles an hour. It's just rough as a cob. And then you got some on Stanley Keller. They've tried to fix it, but I'm not sure they need to do something about it. And it's actually worse after they got through it. Just say for some of the streets: East Ridge, Friendly Lane, Jean Lane, Webster, Haltom Road, Higgins Lane, Joy Lee and Swan, Mack, Fincher Road, Meadow Oaks, Jerry Lane. And this is going to a school, Jerry Lane, west of off of Jean Lane, going to W.T. Francisco, Springdale and Oakwood, Fincher Road and Newman. We have a lot. Just say, for instance, I have just made a notation on Swan. There's some curb. I'm talking about jacked up about a foot or so. 3621, 3625, 3509. Mona, we've got two blocks of streets from 4900 block to 5000. I'm talking about jacked up about this high. And you got Jean Lane, 3600 block, 3738. Vicky, I noticed I was passing by yesterday. It's 4900 block. And another thing, I was talking about some of this click. I don't understand this right here. Why did Joy Lee get fixed? Someone had a curb and gutter, asphalt, and this goes from Earl to Jean Lane. This doesn't make sense to me. Only 2 people live on that street, and the rest of it is vacant lots. That's all I got to say.
Councilmember Fowler, you have your light on. I want to remind everyone of something before you speak that I did not read into the record. Council cannot discuss or debate any issue brought forth at this time, nor can any formal action be taken because the items that are discussed during the Visitor Citizens Forum have not been posted as an agenda item in accordance with the open meetings law. Councilmember Fowler?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Due to your previous statements and our inability to discuss this, I'll refrain and ask that I speak to Mr. Francis later and ask him about some of these issues. Thank you.
Our next person who has filled out a appearance before the council is Mr. Jack Lewis, who wishes to speak on the subject of the bus tour at Christmas time in Haltom City. Mr. Lewis, if you will give us your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. I'm Jack Lewis. I live at 4600 Savelle. I've lived at 4600 Savelle since 1964, and I have on the subject there this bus tour. Back when we were mayor, we started the beautification board, and we selected things that would help give a positive image of Haltom City. We on Savelle, we decorate every Christmas, and we have thousands of people come through on this tour of lights that the Star Telegram sponsors, and people enjoy it. Even before I retired back in the 90s, people talked about the tour. We were the first on the tour. You come off Beach Street, and so it's a good positive thing. But in recent years, our city, our street has deteriorated to some conditions, as all of us know, and the people that ride these buses in recent years have talked, even made comments about, the gentleman mentioned the curbs and gutter on our street. We have curbs and gutters that are pointing upward. They're on Savelle, and when these people come by looking at our lights and look at these streets, I think it really paints a poor picture for Haltom City. Now, this street is in dire need of repair. Some curbs are up as much as 22 inches. Several years ago, when I backed out of my driveway, the tailpipe would drag, so the city came in and put some gravel there, asphalt, and it's in the gutter. Well, it dams the water up. Well, this morning, after that rain last Friday, there are 3 major puddles of water in reservoirs that are caused by these the curbs. So repair is needed badly. This is a health hazard. Mosquitoes will breed and multiply in this standing water. We know this is true. All of you know this is true. but I'm just stating it like it is. I walked with two of our senior citizens this morning, and they were talking about this on other streets. Now, some streets maybe are worse than others, but I know you have a priority list, and I understand you go by priority on which are the worst streets, which are the worst curb and gutter. So I know this takes money, and I know you're even considering tonight a tax increase, even beyond the rollback rate. Now, I've presented this problem. Let me suggest some possible solutions to the problem. In the same neighborhood that I live in, 1 block from me, Roxy Street, for over a year has been under construction with brand new sidewalks. Very good. I watched the council meeting as many of the homeowners petitioned for you not to build the sidewalks, as their lot size were not planned for sidewalks. In addition, one of the homeowners graciously said right here, the cost and time could be spent better on streets and curbs in dire need of repair. I'll have to say amen to that. Maybe in new neighborhoods, but not in older established neighborhoods where the yards were not designed for curb and gutter. They spent more time on sidewalks. They put as much time on the sidewalks, as much money probably, as they did on the street. Well, you go up into Jean Lane and there's grass growing in the curbs. So these things, these are priorities. There are brand new sidewalks in the constructed block of Joy Lee. Now,
Mr. Lewis, if I could interrupt you, and that won't take away from any of your time.
thank you.
The subject you wish to speak on is the bus tour at Christmas time.
Okay.
And I would assume the comment you're making relates to that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's the only thing.
Okay,
you
this
have
is-
been granted the privilege tonight
Yeah.
to speak on under
Yep.
the Visitor Citizens Forum, the bus tour at Christmas time, please.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, and let me get back to the bus tour. I haven't left it. It's sort of like Matlock. You know how you go off and you're corrected by the judge? All right, let's get back. These same buses go down Jean Lane. They go down these streets that we're talking about. I mentioned Sabelle because I live there, and I will say I'm speaking for the neighbors. They've got a petition. They presented it here. They've talked to some councilmen. They've talked to some staff. I've talked with the assistant city manager, and they asked me to do this. So I'm here pleading for their cause. They're not going to be speaking tonight. Some of them are here tonight. So I am saying the whole point is your Christmas tour, other things that we try to do to make our city more beautiful is very important. And we spend a lot of time and money, and I would ask that the city do their part and at least put some maintenance on this street. Now, they're maintaining some of the other streets. Now I said, Mr. Mayor, and if it's okay with you, I'm going to offer some solutions. You need money to do it. It takes money. All right. Money is tight. Postpone the issuance of additional bonded indebtedness to relocate and build a new library. Now, we've got one of the best libraries in town, centrally located here, and we have borrowed money. Now, bonds are going to be issued, maybe already have been, but indebtedness. This is why this increase that we're having is because of indebtedness that has not been addressed for the last 5 years. All right. We
Mr.
received,
Lewis, excuse me.
if I got a minute.
You have about 30 seconds, and I interrupted you a moment ago for
Okay.
about 20 seconds, so if you will,
That's 1
if you
minute,
will
right?
wrap it up. And remember, we're talking about bus tour. at
Okay,
Christmas time.
I'm going back to the bus tour. By the way, I received an email, I want to clear this up, where a councilman said that I was for this tax increase. That is not true. Now, I realize some is
Mr.
true.
Lewis, does this relate
Yes,
to
now.
the subject matter of the bus tour at
Okay.
Christmas time?
Yes, I need some Christmas money, and if y'all will reduce this tax rate, I will have this Christmas money to buy more lights to put on Sabelle so that we can have a beautiful city and people can drive down our street safely without going through these mosquito dens. So I would like and by the way, Mayor, I would like to ask, can you give us some assurance tonight that this subject of this Christmas tour, this needs to be done, we got 4 months, and I'd like some assurance from you tonight or the council. I know you cannot act on this, and I don't want no action, but I would like for it to be considered, and the neighbors have asked me to ask y'all, so I'm asking you, if you could consider possibly some maintenance before Christmas on Sabelle Street.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you.
One thing I failed to do a moment ago before we went to the Visitor Citizens Forum, and by the way, these are the two, all of those who have filled out a speaker's request card, so we're now complete. We're through with the Visitor Citizens Forum, but the Visitor Citizens Forum is for, Wayne, did you? Okay.
The consent agenda and stuff like that, your item is on number 11. You will have that opportunity at that time when we go to number 11 to speak. Okay?
Okay, so we're through with the Visitor Citizens Forum. We will get into some public hearings where we'll have more input on various topics in just a moment. But on the consent agenda, one thing I failed to do in moving the meeting forward, I think our city manager had a comment to make to those in the council chamber as well as watching on TV regarding our bond rating.
If I could, Mayor and Council, really for the benefit of the citizens who are here tonight, or those of you who are at home listening, item number 13 and 14 that was added to the consent item, I'd like to address that a little bit, just to explain it, I guess. Both of those items pertain to the sale of certificates of obligation, long-term indebtedness that the city has been involved in for some time. About 2 weeks ago, the city, several staff members and the mayor were pursuing a rating review in anticipation of this upcoming debt issue. We met with Standard & Poor's, one of the rating agencies, and we were actually quite concerned with how the rating might be on the city of Haltom City due to the upcoming fiscal year, the budgetary concerns that we've had recently. But our rating review in anticipation of this debt issuance actually fared fairly well. The rating agency decided to sustain our A rating, which was a very good thing. We really went into it with the idea that we may be downgraded due to the economy and the situation here. But the rating agencies, I guess, felt that we were a pretty good risk, and they sustained that level. And then the next step that we went through were the issuing of the bids for the certificates of obligation. Those bids were opened here at City Hall earlier today. And as I believe Councilmember Averett mentioned earlier, we awarded a bid for the purchasers, to the purchasers of the certificates of obligation, First Southwest Company, bonds over a 20-year period, $3.8 million for 4.55% interest rate, which was a pretty good thing. And that goes back to that rating review that we recently did, that helps us gain a better interest rate so that we can afford to do some of the projects that we've been talking about doing for the last several months. We just wanted to clear that up because those two items were added onto the consent, and there was no discussion out here. There was quite a bit of lengthy discussion back in the pre-council meeting, but we just wanted to share that with you tonight. It was actually a very good thing that we sustained our rating and that we were able, in a position today, earlier, to actually issue those bonds. So we just wanted to let you know.
Members of the council, any comments regarding what Mr. Torres has just shared with us? Councilmember Fowler?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for you or the manager. It had been previously stated that about holding off on issuing bonds for a library. The voters passed the bond election and passed the funding for a library, and it is not within our realm to hold off on issuance of bonds for a library. Am I correct in that?
Actually, I think the city does have the ability to hold off a bit longer before we issue those bonds without creating any kind of legal problem with our citizens. Right now, the debt is issued to be the debt is scheduled to be issued for the library next summer. So we're still looking at a whole nother year before we actually go through these same motions like we've done tonight.
I guess to interrupt you, am I correct in that though we don't have the ability to say, well, King's X, we're not going to issue bonds for a library because it was voted on by this
That
all
is
the
correct.
citizens of Haltom City.
That is correct. The voters have approved and authorized us to proceed on with that project, and I think the commitment is actually there. Now, could we put it off longer than one more year? Yes, I think we can legally. A lot of cities, in fact, are doing that. They're pushing off some of their projects because of the same financial condition that they're in.
Which in all actuality, though, we've started the public works facility, started the recreation center, and some of the other things that were passed to that same bond program. The only thing that hasn't been started, am I correct, is the library?
The library and the drainage project on
Big Fossil.
Fossil down on the south end of town. Those are the two, well, actually, those and the final issuance of $2 million for additional street improvements, which was also authorized by the voters.
Which we had spoken about in passing for the next budget year, looking at.
Actually, that $2 million is not set to be issued until 2006.
Okay, 6.
Right. But back to the library, assuming, and that decision has not yet been made about issuing the debt for the library next year. We'll as we get closer to that time frame, I think this group will again take a look at that and look at the financial condition we're in at that time, and then make a decision as whether or not we're going to proceed on schedule. But keep in mind, even if we issue that debt a year from now, it will be again a year later before the first payment is due on that. So, it's really 2 years out before we might even begin to start paying back on a library project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we move now to item number 10 on the agenda, and that is a public hearing. And to introduce this item,
Mr. Mayor, we had some announcements. I apologize.
You are correct. Thank you for.
I apologize for interrupting you.
No, thank you. You have an announcement, I believe. I guess I've got my mind on something else.
That's okay. Well, you're thinking about Christmas buses, so we'll get you straight here in a minute. I got a little excited myself, Moonfest 2003, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday, September the 13th. This will be held at W.G. Thomas Coliseum, 6108 Broadway Avenue. It's a celebration of cultural diversity sponsored by the All-Asian American Chamber of Commerce. And I invite y'all to that. That's Saturday, September the 13th, 11 to 5. If you've never been to one of these, they have a lot of different shows that they put on and a lot of different types of food. And so if you'd like to check out a lot of good food and some good shows, that's a place to be. Another item of interest, don't forget, do not trash your old phone books. Recycle project directory. It's still available. Special bins are located at Fire Station number 3. That's at 820 and Haltom Road. That was August the 1st through September the 2nd, but that's been extended to September the 15th. And Mr. Mayor, on another note, I was out of town a couple of weeks ago and the senior citizens put on a spaghetti feed, and I understand that Councilperson Bransom kind of headed up the food department for serving food, and I'd like to extend my thanks to Councilmember Bransom and Mayor Pro Tem Hurley and the mayor for them coming out and serving food that night. And also I'd like to thank school board member Mary Spencer, and we also had a city employee, Rhonda Brown. I wasn't able to make it, so I had a couple of people go in my place, and I understand they did a good job. So I want to thank everybody for doing that. And it's my understanding that the senior citizens did meet the goal that we're trying to reach.
Okay, I think may have missed one elected official who served.
Who was that? I'm sorry.
Your colleague on the end.
I couldn't see him for Tracy. I apologize for that. I'm sorry, Mr. Jim Sutton was there too. I knew that I was leaving one out. But Mr. Sutton was there too. He was kind of short. I couldn't see him over the top of the 3 pictures, but I appreciate that. I'm sorry I left you out.
So you saw the picture?
Right.
Councilmember Hurley?
Well, the mayor was there too, but I think the most unique thing was that we all had to wear hairnets. But that's as far as we went. Now, we had a good time.
Why did you wear a hairnet?
Serving food. Serving food.
I think we're getting more information than we really wanted to know about that spaghetti supper. We have an election coming up, statewide election, and our city secretary, Ms. Brenda Staub, has an announcement to make regarding early voting.
Tarrant County early voting will be starting, well, actually the 28th and 29th. That's Thursday and Friday from 8 to 5. They will be closed August 30th and 31st, and they will be closed September 1st. That is a legal holiday, which is Labor Day. It starts back up September the 2nd through the 9th. There's various times. There is a printout back there in the back. Also, the location here in Haltom City is the police storefront, which is at 3520 Denton Highway. If you're interested in getting some information on the propositions that are available, please go to tarrantcounty.com and read the propositions and the constitutional amendments that are up for vote.
I felt it was very important to inform our citizens here in Haltom City where they voted on these constitutional amendments. So, Councilmember Williams and Ms. Staub, thank you both for those announcements. And now we're ready, Mr. Pliska, to move to item number 10, which is a public hearing and then an ordinance to correspond with that hearing.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, citizens of Haltom City. This is conditional use 03-03 to conduct a public hearing and consider the application of Mr. Egbert Wright for a conditional use permit to operate an auto sales facility on property zoned M2 Heavy Industrial District on lots 21 and 22 Johnson and McGinnis subdivision, containing approximately .787 acres of land located on the south side of Northeast 28th Street and locally known as 4100 and 4102 Northeast 28th. The accompanying ordinance is Ordinance O 2003-022-15, consideration and/or action regarding approval of an ordinance amending Ordinance O 2002-03215, as amended, the comprehensive zoning ordinance of the City of Haltom City for a conditional use permit to allow for an auto sales facility in accordance with Ordinance 2002-03215 zoning ordinance, Section 36-2, conditional uses on lots 21 and 22 Johnson and McGinnis Edition, containing approximately .787 acres of land and locally known as 4100 and 4102 Northeast 28th Street, and this is the first reading. Again, the applicant is requesting a conditional use permit with site plan approval in order to operate an auto sales facility on this site. I list for you the adjacent zoning and land uses for you. Comprehensive land use plan, this site is designated as commercial district according to the city's land use plan. Therefore, the requested use would be in compliance with this plan. Again, the property will be accessed from Northeast 28th Street. A brief analysis, the site is zoned M2 Commercial District and does not allow for an automobile sales facility without this conditional use permit and site plan approval. Therefore, the applicant is seeking such. Based on the square footage of the building, the applicant is required to have 6 customer parking spaces, which need to be clearly marked and striped. The landscaping requirement is based on the square footage of the customer parking spaces and will require a landscape open space of approximately 64 square feet. The applicant will need to meet these requirements or seek a variance, and the applicant has met said requirements on this. Legal notice regarding the public hearing was published in the Fort Worth Star-Telegram on August 1st, 2003. Property owner notifications of all properties within 200 feet of the site were mailed out. 13 property owners were notified. Staff received 0 in favor and 0 in opposition. I formally submit the site plan in accompanying with this ordinance. At their meeting on August 12, 2003, the P&Z Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval to the City Council for the conditional use permit to allow for an automobile sales facility on this site.
Members of the council, before I open the public hearing, to members of the audience, you have any questions or comments for Mr. Pliska regarding this item? Councilmember Williams?
I've got one, Mr. Pliska. I drove by the property. Is it the Tricolor Aqua building? Is that what we're...
That is correct.
Okay, with the Hawaiian...
with the bananas for landscape.
I'm waiting for the bananas to get ripe. That does serve as the landscape. That's more than adequate?
The area there alongside the right-of-way, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Yeah, that meets the minimum square footage requirements.
Okay. How do we maintain those in the future once that's converted, once we get the conditional use permit? What is our manner of policing that to see that the
that would be through code enforcement.
Through code enforcement?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
There being no further questions from council, I'll open the public hearing at this time to allow anyone in the audience who wishes to speak either for or against this request for a conditional use permit, as Mr. Pliska has just outlined. We traditionally give the applicant himself or herself an opportunity to address the council first. Mr. Wright, are you in the audience tonight?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Sonny Elliott, and I'm here representing Mr. Wright.
Okay. And we have your address, I believe. And
Yes, sir. It's 5208 Mallory Street in Haltom City.
Okay.
Excuse me. I think anyone who's seen this property can evaluate for themselves the condition it was in and the condition it is now. And if there's any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer.
Members of the council, any questions for Mr. Elliott? I don't believe there are, Mr. Elliott. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Members of the audience, anyone here wishing to speak either for or against this application? Okay, there being none, I close the public hearing at this time, and we move to the corresponding ordinance, and I'm in line for a motion regarding this item. Councilmember Hurley.
I move that we approve ordinance 02003-022-15.
Have a motion to approve. Councilmember Henderson.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, there being none, if you'll register your vote, I will display it. And that passes by unanimous vote. We come now to item number 11, and that will be introduced by our Finance Director, Mr. Pat Elfrink, and this regards the 2003-2004 budget. Not only the public hearing to allow citizen input, but also to allow the council to take action regarding this item. Mr. Elfrink.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are indeed here for a public hearing so that the council can receive comments and input from any citizens of Haltom City who wish to do so with regard to this budget. This budget is for the next fiscal year. It is intended to provide funding for the City of Haltom City, the Crime Control and Prevention District, and the Economic Development Corporation. It covers a total of 31 different funds, separate funds within the city, and those are outlined and listed on the second page of the ordinance that is included in this item. This budget was worked on, work was begun on this budget over 6 months ago internally by staff. A great number of meetings were held with different department heads and the city manager. And then it was reviewed extensively during a number of city council workshops that were public meetings also held in the Haltom City Library. These meetings were all open to the public also. The budget that we finally have here as attached has been modified to reflect various changes that were made at the discretion and approval of the council at the last several workshops. Public notice of the hearing that we're holding tonight has been provided for in a legal notice that complies with our city charter. I do need to mention that state law requires that the council adopt a budget before they adopt a tax rate, and the tax rate is the next item on the agenda tonight. Approval of this item and its accompanying appropriation ordinance will grant authority to the city manager to administer and direct city services to Haltom City residents in accordance with the expenditure levels of the budget for the forthcoming fiscal year. I'll mention that it funds adequate levels of police and fire services, street maintenance services, and recreation services to the public. This budget has been probably the most difficult one that many of us have worked on. It certainly is the most difficult one that I've worked on in 19 years of this business. I won't go into great detail, but in our efforts to balance this budget, I think it should be pointed out that in the general fund alone, there are 21 staff positions that are not being funded next year, which cut to the expenditure needs by $852,000. And those were directly supported a great deal by the tax rate and the sales tax rate and other general fund revenues. That's all I have to say about this budget. This item, the city manager may wish to add some comments or go directly to the public hearing. I'm not sure.
Yeah, just a few comments if I could, Mayor. I think everything that Pat has addressed up to this point, certainly I agree with. It has also been one of the most difficult processes I've been through in all of my years of this business as well. We're not very satisfied with this budget in the sense that it is not addressing any pay raises next year for city employees. I think our city employees are our biggest asset, and this is the first time I've ever had to develop a budget that I was not able to incorporate any kind of pay increases next year, whether they be cost of living or merit. So we're still working through that, and we're trying to find some way to make that work. But at this point, the way the budget is structured, they are not addressed. This budget for next year, actually, in the general fund, and as Pat mentioned, there are 31 different funds that total a little more than $50 million, all total. The one budget, the general fund, which is our largest fund that provides most of our basic operations with the city, is actually cut next year from this present year, and we've had to eliminate a good number of positions. So it's been a very difficult time, and then on top of that, we've had to come to the table with a recommendation for a tax increase. And the city council met 5 different evenings to discuss this budget and work through it and try to work out some way that we can make this palatable for all of us and for all of you as well. And it's been a very difficult process, and what we have tonight for the public hearing and first reading is a document that has truly been worked through many times at all different levels of the organization. And if there's any questions, it's a very complicated document. It's 3 or 4 inches thick in its entirety, with a great amount of detail. So it's not something one can just pick up real fast and comprehend. I even question my ability to comprehend it after working with it for 6 months. But certainly if there's ever a need for any citizen to sit down with myself or any of my staff and discuss it, and so that you might get to know that, we would welcome that opportunity to sit with you. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, before we open the public hearing to allow members of the audience to address the council regarding the budget for the city of Haltom City, as well as the Crime Control and Prevention District and the Economic Development Corporation, I want to make a couple of statements. We're asking tonight for input from our citizens. The staff, as indicated earlier, has spent 6 months putting this together, and the council has spent a great many hours in intense discussion regarding the budget that is being brought forth at this time. With the revenue shortfall that has occurred in Haltom City over the last year, and I think most of you are familiar with the reasons for that, we have been faced with a significant challenge in bringing forth a balanced budget. When you deal with budgets, there are only 3 options you have. You dip into your savings, you cut expenses, or you increase revenue. And what we have tried to do, and what this document presents, is a balance where all 3 of these areas have been addressed. What I want to ask you tonight is for constructive input. This is not intended to be a confrontational encounter between citizens and members of the council. We want to hear your input. We desire to hear the comments you have to make, because this is a partnership involving a lot of people, businesses, citizens, homeowners, old, young, all in between, staff, council. And I'd like to encourage all of us, and I know it's real easy when we talk about increasing taxes or cutting expenses for things to really get emotional. And I want to ask everybody here tonight to focus on the issues, and let's talk objectively about these things in partnership with each other as we try to move Haltom City forward to become the proud and progressive community that we all so much embrace. Having said that, I will open the public hearing at this time, and this will give members of the audience an opportunity to address the council And it may be when a citizen addresses the council that the council may have a question or two for that individual, and they'll certainly be given an opportunity to do that. Because this is a public hearing, there is not a need for anyone to fill out one of the speaker's request cards. However, we have a couple of them filled out, and I will go ahead and honor those first, and then we'll open it up to other members of the audience. But you'll have 5 minutes to address the council. The first of these two speakers' request forms that have been filled out is by Ms. Rachel Powell. Ms. Powell, if you'll come to the podium, give us your name and address for the record, please, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Rachel Powell, and I reside at 4920 Saucer Drive. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this evening I would like to discuss the budget for civil service sworn employees. I want to start with addressing the city charter regarding this budget. Section 2, Article 11 of the city charter defines a sworn employee as any certified employee of the police or fire department below the rank of chief or assistant chief. And I kind of want to reiterate this and stress exactly what they're saying. They're strictly talking about civil service sworn employees, police and fire in this portion of the charter. The proposed budget does not reflect a seniority pay due to these sworn employees in the new fiscal year. These wages will be frozen should the budget be accepted as is. And I strongly encourage the council to thoroughly review this issue of the budget before sending it to a vote. The City Charter, Article 11, Section 11.8 states that all persons in each sworn employee classification shall be paid the same salary, and in addition thereto be paid applicable longevity or seniority pay. Since this issue has surfaced, I have heard seniority pay referred to as a pay raise or a step raise, and it is neither of those, nor should it be classified as a raise. Seniority pay is a portion of their salary. It's a reflection of each individual's career development in relation to time served in a particular position within the department. It is not a benefit or bonus, cost of living allocation, or a merit raise. Many companies and large corporations and even other cities work off a merit raise system. These are not civil service cities such as Haltom City. Their merit raises are based on performance and evaluations and should not be compared to Haltom City. To offer additional information to you, I contacted the city of Keller, and they have in fact frozen their merit raise system currently for their proposed new budget of the next year. But they are not a civil service city, so cannot be compared to Haltom City. However, they have budgeted for a cost of living allocation, so there is some balance where it comes to that. This information was provided to me by the Human Resources Department today in Keller. The financial status of the city, while it may be grim, is not destitute. As it stands now, the budget is reflecting several changes to increase revenues for the city and balance the budget accordingly. While increases in taxes and rates are acceptable solutions, the removal of seniority pay for our sworn employees is not. These particular employees are in a profession where they are dependent upon salary classification step plans and seniority pay as part of their career, just as the military does. I do not believe that now is the time to lose the support of the employees for the city. What a shame it would be for employees to view the city as a means to an end, as a town that you drive through to get somewhere else, as a place to visit and work but not to live, as a place to start a career but not finish a career and move on. Wouldn't it be great to know the employees we speak so highly of do the same for our city? These courageous, hardworking men and women are the center of this city's character. They are the largest daily reflection of the integrity of the city. They are interfaced with the public on a daily basis and treat all citizens with the respect they deserve. It would seem that us as a city and you as a council will only tolerate the same treatment for these particular employees. And I understand the great responsibility the city council has with this budget and how hard going through this year's budget has been. And I hope that every possible saving suggestion is utilized. Which leads me to my one big question. that I have. In May, at a budget workshop that was held here, the results of a city employee survey were revealed. This particular survey, and I quote, was seeking various ideas for reducing expenditures. There was an 89% response rate, and I would just ask the city, if anyone knows, how many of any of these suggestions, if any, have been implemented in this year's budget. And with that, I'd just like to thank you for your time. And while there may be limited discussion regarding these issues at this time because they are so large, I would welcome any responses that you have.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. Members of the council, any questions, comments for Ms. Powell? Thank you, Ms. Powell.
Thank you.
The second individual who had filled out an appearance before the council card regarding this item is Mr. Bill Journay. Mr. Journay, if you'll come to the podium at this time and give us your name and address for the record, and you too have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. My name is Bill Journay. I live at 4529 Nadine, Haltom City. And I come representing, I suppose, the poor working class people. It's nice to know that we do have people in government or any place else that can figure these budgets. I myself, if I get into more than 3-figure digits, my brain hurts. But what I have to say is about budget and other things concerning the government. I won't take up that much time. Budget and our money in general. The foxes should not be allowed to jury the goose's trial. But I was there when it happened, and I heard and saw it all. A city council person needs his own change on his property for commercial advantage. A citizen comes represented his neighborhood in protest. He alone stands against the experienced zoning person and our council members. After a bit of political mumble-jumble, guess who won? Not one council person came to the defense of our inexperienced citizen. Not one. What you are thunder so that we cannot hear what you say to the contrary. This behavior need not surprise any of us. It is prevalent throughout, even taught in our political science classes. But to do something like this with the cameras rolling tells us that government has now become larger than the people it serves. Or, who will believe that any facet or branch of government will build, staff, support, and maintain these senior citizen centers, recreation centers, simply because our politicians like old folks and children? If 1,000 council members agree upon a wrong thing, it's still a wrong thing. And there are many more such examples of this behavior here in our city alone. I have experienced a few. This adverse behavior is the very reason good people don't care about government, whether they care or not, whether they vote or not. The politician will have his lion's share. But I will always encourage a vote, encourage others to visit city council meetings and town hall meetings. People should come and witness firsthand the circus our democracy is becoming. And now we juggle a budget, right? Have we really considered all advantages and reasons necessary for this tax hike? Have we gone far enough back to determine what is or is not best for our citizens, rather than just the politically concerned? For instance, where's this money going? Where did the last year's money go? And how did the people benefit? How did we go from a simple 1 cent city sales tax to an 8+ cent general sales tax that goes mostly for government-controlled environments, government-instituted programs that no one voted for, and literally consumes funds that should go for police and patrols and our safety, like it was first proposed? Or who suggested that we pay teachers up to $18 per hour to teach illegals English? No one I've spoke to said they voted for it or would. Are these the reasons we can't afford proper police anymore? Whatever the reason, I don't believe our present tax hike will be our salvation either. I suggest that we find and fix the leaks before we ask for more money for more plumbing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jornet. And just a comment to the public in general on an issue that arose during Mr. Jornet's comments. The question was asked, where did the money go last year? Where will it go this year? I think Mr. Torres had said earlier, anytime any citizen wants to talk with him about this budget, give him a call. I know we have very extensive budget documents about this past year and about the coming year, and those are certainly available to the public. And they can be had, I believe, a copy is at City Hall in your office, as well as at the public library. So if you do have questions about where the money goes, there are vehicles in place for you to find answers to those questions. Councilmember Sutton, and then Councilmember Williams.
I just wanted to probably speak on behalf of the council that any of us council members would be willing to meet with any of you to go over any aspect of the budget that you have questions on. And I think I speak on behalf of all my colleagues that any of us would be willing to meet with you at any time to talk over those things.
Councilmember Williams.
Thank you. I guess this would be for the attorney. Mr. Jarney said that we took a 1 cent sales tax, city sales tax, and raised it to 8 1/4. Is 6 1/4% of that state sales tax, and the other 2 is city?
That's correct. The maximum local sales tax for the city permitted by law is 2 cents.
So we didn't go from 1 cent to 8 1/4?
No. You may have gone from 1 cent to 2 cents. That's the maximum you can go. The rest is state sales tax.
Okay, I was just confused on that.
That was all voter approved, by the way. That 2 cents.
Yeah, by law, that has to be approved at an election by the voters of Haltom City.
Thanks for clarifying that for me.
Okay, we move then to invite members of the audience who wish to address the issue of the budget for this upcoming year. If you wish to speak on this subject, just one at a time. Ms. Smith, if you will, come to the podium and give us your name and address for the record. And while she's coming up here, she told me the last time she spoke, she left 37 seconds on the table, and she may want to use those tonight.
The mayor saw me in the hall, and I told him, do I have to talk to you, or can I talk to everybody?
Your 5 minutes are rolling.
Watch it. I need to know who I'm talking to. I told him if I didn't get my 37 seconds, I was going to get a new mayor. Sit down, boy. I'm talking.
We do need your name and address for the
Kojak,
record.
I would love to go over this budget with you, but darling, I don't think I have enough time. I've lived on borrowed time for a couple of years, and it'd take me so long for you to explain it to me.
I would love to meet with you so much that I could abbreviate it for you, so
Okay.
we could run through it real fast.
Okay.
We do need you, please, to give your name and address for the record.
I'm sorry. Edrina Jennings Smith, 3024 Jean Lane, Haltom City, Texas. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm an old woman. I don't see things like a lot of you young folks do. I don't see things like a lot of you old folks see them. But every one of these people in these seats up here, I don't think any of them were paid to run for office. They were elected, which tells me they have sense enough to make up a budget, which tells me that we had enough confidence to put them in the position they're in to do the budget. I don't want to pay any more taxes, but if I've got to do it to make Kojak's salary, I'm ready. What happens when tax goes up on gasoline? we don't stay at home. I can't go fill my car up because the gas tax went up. I can't go along with that. If company comes and you're short on dinner, you add water to the gravy. That's right. It's what I've always done. I guess the only one here that really has a more monetary bank account than I do is Councilman Williams, but he inherited it, so, worked hard and saved his money and inherited it. I'm not a rich person, but I don't want to be a freeloader. I don't want to get my taxes exempt because I'm old, when poor old David Averett down there, who is raising a young family, has to double up on his so the old folks can have a tax break. That's not right. And us old folks may be old and we may be senile, but we don't have to be freeloaders. Now then, I've used my 37 seconds, and I'll save my 5 minutes for the next time I talk.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Actually, you now have a couple of minutes in reserve for the next time you speak. And just in case anybody's wondering, she was looking this way when she said something about Kojak, and I don't know if she was talking to me or to the city manager.
I can assure you it was me.
Oh, okay.
You ought to do something about that hair, though, Mayor.
Okay, since this is a public hearing, we move to the next individual who'd like to speak on this subject. If you will, Mr. Eklund, if you'll come forward, give us your name and address for the record, and you too have 5 minutes.
My name is Ray Eklund. I live at 2532 Oakwood Terrace here in Haltom City. Let me tell you, Mr. Mayor, trying to speak after Miss Smith is like Pee Wee Herman trying to talk after the Pope. Well, let me share a few ideas with you, if we could. On page 219 of one of your budget that I had the brief opportunity to look at this afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Williams. It talks about the Economic Development Fund, which is one of the 31 or 32 funds that you have listed in there. And I've often found that to be an interesting fund. I don't know enough about it. I think we could probably spend all night talking about what it's supposed to do. Right? But the first line says that economic development is here to attract people and businesses to relocate in Haltom City. And that's a wonderful idea. I think the underpinning of it is we want them to come here so that we get a better tax base, so that we get more tax dollars, so that we can fund those social and infrastructure needs that we do through our budget system. We have a 1/2-cent sales tax that goes to that economic development fund. I think it's important that we think about what that's all about, and our chief financial officer here briefly explained to me that it's limited what we can do with those funds. It's a lot of funds. It's half of that. It's half of that 2 cents that we talked about earlier, if I'm not mistaken. A quarter.
A fourth of the 2 cents.
It's a fourth.
It's a 1/2 cent.
A 1/2 cent sales tax, which is 1/4 of the dollars that we bring in, goes to this little box over here, right? And it can only be spent certain ways, right? And we continue to spend it. We want to attract businesses, right? And that's well and good. I'm a neighborhood kind of guy. You guys know what I do all day. I visit people, I see people, I know the neighborhoods. That's my thing, right? And I understand the importance of having businesses in, right? But I think we should search out and reach out and find ways to partner with small developers to redevelop these little neighborhood spots. Okay, now we all know, and everybody in this audience knows, that one house down the street from them that looks like a rat hole is pulling the whole neighborhood down. Okay, and I think the city should find a way to reach out and lift that house up out of there, redevelop it, tear it down, do something, right, to get that neighborhood a boost. wherever that house is. And I'm a little aggravated that we go and we spend a lot of money and we got people with nice ties on and computers and all that kind of stuff, and we send them places to bring business in here, but we won't reach across the street to help this neighborhood that needs this kind of help. So, that's been my aggravation for a while. I think we need doctor's offices and we need dentist offices. We need little small community neighborhood kind of businesses as well as the big box developers and manufacturers that we might get. And I appreciate all their tax dollars too. But these small businesses will help our neighborhoods. We have no guarantee when we cough up or we forgive the taxes for, or we do some development infrastructure-wise for some business to come in, right? That the people that are going to work there are going to live here. They're going to be part of our community. They're going to send their children to our schools and help us make this a better community. So I understand that this is a very complicated process. It's a very big document. We're not going to make any major changes by coming up here and visiting with you tonight. Okay? But I'm trying to plant a seed that maybe next year, or we can start developing through the city manager's office and the staff to say, we need economic development over here in the houses too, because I've visited with the economic development gentleman more than once, and he's told me more than once that the economic development fund is for attracting businesses. I want to know, is it really working? Okay, when you take that much money, and I saw the number $2 million on the page somewhere, okay? If I'm not mistaken, that represents about 4 Kmart sales taxes. 4 Kmarts. That's a lot of sales tax. $2 million. Is it working? Okay? Are we getting our $2 million back for this economic development fund? Right? And we have the incentive fund. Again, I'd like for you to consider those kind of things. We need businesses that enhance our neighborhoods and the livability of our city. Okay? And I guess my time's up.
Exactly 5 minutes, Mr. Eklund.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak during the course of this public hearing on the 2003-2004 budget? Okay, there being none, I'll close the public hearing at this time, and we move now to the corresponding motion regarding approval of the budget for 2003-2004. I'm in line for a motion. Councilmember Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move for approval of budget, or fiscal budget for the 2003-2004 as written.
Have a motion for approval. Councilmember Hurley.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Councilmember Williams, is that for a second, or?
I was going to see if he was going to entertain any.
Yes. Please go ahead.
I'd like to stay in line. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody that came up and stated their views. I will say that the council worked very long hours on this, and these were all open public meetings and listed. Next year, if anybody wants to come to these meetings, we had quite a few citizens came down to sit through the meetings, and I appreciate the time that they put in. I have a question for the attorney. Ms. Powell brought up a item a while ago about the seniority pay versus a merit pay. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am familiar with that.
Could you elaborate on that?
I don't have
state law wise, or?
Yeah, we're discussing the city charter requirement. I don't have the charter language in front of me, but the city charter requires that civil service positions be paid the same salary in the same grade. In addition thereto, they can be paid longevity and seniority pay. And
you said can.
Shall be paid.
Shall be, okay.
Yes. And
shall is in will.
Shall is in will.
Okay.
Yes. State statute covers longevity pay for officers, and it's based upon their tenure or longevity with the department. That's set forth by state law. Seniority pay is set by the city council in the budget. You determine what seniority pay is applicable to those positions.
Okay, are we held by state law through our ordinance we have here to pay that, or are we free to not pay it?
No, that's up to the city council to determine what seniority pay will be applicable to those positions.
Mr. City Manager, do you have anything to...
May I clarify a little bit? The longevity pay that is state mandated is $72 per year for each year that a person has seniority. That is the part mandated by the state,
That's
correct?
That's state law.
Yes,
And that
we
is
do-
still...
that is in the budget.
That is still incorporated in the budget.
That is in the
That's
budget,
correct.
absolutely, for every employee who is eligible
10-year
for that.
reign gets $720.
I'm sorry? Yes,
10-year.
that's exactly correct.
10-year gets
Yes.
$720.
That's correct. And that's
Okay.
in the budget. Always has been. Never even considered for reduction or elimination, because we can't.
Could we take Wayne's thoughts just a step further, just for clarification? Because I think it's our opinion that that although we desire to pay the seniority pay, is there a requirement that that seniority pay be increased each year? Because the seniority pay is in place now. But is there a requirement, a legal requirement, that that be increased for the next, for each subsequent fiscal year?
The short answer to that is no, there is no requirement. Again, the charter says that employees, civil service employees, shall be paid applicable longevity and seniority pay. The longevity pay is controlled by state statute. The local government code sets forth that dollar amount, as Pat explained. Seniority pay is determined by the city, and in particular by the city council, in accordance with this budget process. There's no requirement that it be increased annually. It's whatever the council determines is appropriate.
Or affordable, in our case, I
affordable.
think.
Okay. Of course, council had brought up the idea of a raise, a bonus, or something for the. I feel like we got 200-something employees that work for us, and it's not their fault. The economy is in the condition it's in, and it's not our fault. It's just there's highs and lows, and we just happen to be at a low. We have some citizens over here that's not wanting to pay any taxes or not wanting to pay as much taxes, and we got people working for us wanting more money. And I can understand the more money. I'm not as rich as Mother said I was, but dedication has a lot to do with it. We have people that work here because they love Haltom City, not because of what we pay, because you look at some of the other pay scales, there's other cities that pay more than we do, and working conditions are better. But we have a lot of employees that I feel that we're paying, probably even, some below what they need, some I think we're probably paying above what they deserve. But I know that we were looking at, Mr. Elfring, did you say 26 positions that we were looking at cutting?
21 positions
21,
in the general
and how many of
fund,
those are vacant at this time?
All but 3, I believe. No, all but 2.
2.
Thank you.
All but 3. So we'll only be,
Two of those 21.
2 of the 21 will be cut.
2 of the 21 are filled, and someone's going to receive has received a notice that
Two people have received notice that the position is not going to be funded next year.
And that'll be it.
That would
and
be it.
if I may state for the public's knowledge,
Right.
too, I passed out some information to council earlier today. It doesn't make our plight any better, but I think sometimes it's a little soothing. But other major communities in the Metroplex area are dealing with the same issues, laying off dozens of people, literally. They've done so last year. They're laying off even more this year. One very prosperous community in Tarrant County that I would think would be almost immune to this situation because it has the world's largest airport in it and one of the nation's largest outlet malls, gave no raises last year to their employees and is giving no raises this year to their employees. I'm not saying that's a great thing to emulate, but hopefully this will be the only year that we do this.
Clarification, just so we're not stating something incorrectly. There were 3 positions that have been given notice that the position is not going to be funded next year, and it looks like it's going to result in actually laying those 3 off. There were 6 positions total, but in 3 of those positions or situations, there are other positions that they're moving to. So we're only looking at 3 people potentially that may actually be unemployed.
And I was thinking in terms of the general fund, but there is one more in the water fund, right?
Right.
Is the police chief still here?
No, he's gone.
Who's representing?
The chief is not here. Russell is, Officer Ragsdale is,
Thank.
You didn't know you'd have to talk, did you?
Sergeant Ragsdale, I hate to do that to you.
I appreciate it.
I might make you chief tonight.
I hope not.
Just for tonight. In this budget, we've earmarked, I think it's $50,000 toward SROs, isn't that?
No, I don't know where you're going.
In revenues?
I don't know where you're going with that. Help me out.
In our revenue portion, if things go as we have planned, we should receive $50,000 in revenue toward SRO officers.
Potentially, yes, sir.
Okay. Should we not get that, how will that affect this, or how will that affect the department? Can you answer that, or is that an unfair question?
That's a question I can
Nothing
answer.
I can answer.
Yes. If BISD does not honor our request to participate 50% on the 2 SROs, those officers would be removed from the schools effective October 1 and reassigned to street duty.
But we will still have protection at the schools on a 911 basis.
I mean, calls come in from the school.
Calls for service, yes, sir.
Okay. That's all I have.
We have 3 other lights on. Councilmember Fowler was first, Councilmember Hurley, and then Councilmember Sutton.
Well, in case of brevity, I also would like to thank the 3 individuals that came and spoke tonight. Believe it or not, this is what it's about. It's what democracy is about coming and having input. Ms. Powell, to answer briefly on your question, as had previously mentioned, we have 21 positions we're cutting that we're not refunding. We're actually laying off 3 people. We have looked at, and that's one of the first things we ask about, is there any opportunity to do pay raises? And it's not just for police and fire, because although our police and fire are very important, if they don't have water service to fight fires, and if we don't have streets that we can get down, the street department to prevent crime, it's a difficult situation. We feel like that it needs to be fair and equitable among all the different departments. The first position that we refunded, it was slated to have 1 firefighter cut from the, is that correct?
The 3 originally.
3 originally. We have actually, the first one that this entire council said, the first night that we were able to loosen up funds from one area or divert it and put a priority, the first area we put it in was the fire department, was to make sure that we didn't lose personnel. And I feel like that we made a very, very concentrated effort not to do that, to make sure that our citizens stayed protected, both in police and fire. Whether we can give raises or not, we're not able to do it this year, but we fortunately weren't able to lose public safety people. Mr. Journet, for your time, and we sit up here and get lambasted, and I don't normally do this, and it's not typically something that I enjoy doing, but your comments were directed towards me, and yes, I did buy a piece of property, and I'm going to end up putting a building on that piece of property and have people that come in and spend sales tax and do things that help fund this community. And I would encourage every one of my colleagues and every citizen out there, if you have a small business or anything, I don't care who you are, that's what drives this community. That's what creates the sales tax and pays the bills, excuse me. And I would encourage anyone, if they'd like to come down, just because I sit on the city council doesn't mean I choose to do business and stay here in Haltom City. And I take a great deal of pride in this community. And I will continue to buy property in this community instead of going to North Richland Hills or Watauga or Keller or Fort Worth. I'm going to spend my money right back in this community because I have faith in it. And I'd encourage everyone else to do that. So don't hold it against someone because they're on the council or they're another citizen and they ask for zoning or they ask for something to make this a better place. We're trying to do that. Mr. Eklund, your comments haven't fallen on deaf ears. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Manager, Mr. Mayor, part of our efforts in Clean Sweep, the program that was initiated to help clean up some of the communities, was to do what you're talking about, to give our code enforcement an arm or an avenue to go out and ask people to clean their property up, and if they choose not to, demand that they clean it up. And us, we've also looked at doing some things to provide help or services to those people possibly. We've also looked at increasing a little bit of funding for the demolition of substandard housing, things that are blights to the neighborhood that, you know, we would like to do even more. We've looked at maybe increasing that a little bit to help bring back neighborhoods that maybe some areas that you could knock an old substandard structure down and somebody come in, an investor or someone, I know you do a lot of it yourself. You invest a lot back in this community. Come back in, maybe put a new home there and revitalize the neighborhood. So to answer your question, that may be something that we're doing right now currently. If you need more information on that, you could, you know, you and I speak quite frequently about things. Share some of your philosophies or ideas with myself, and I would be more than happy to transfer those to the rest of the council members. Now, thank you for your time. As I said, this is my I don't know, did we determine, Mayor, which one of us has been on the most amount of budgets? I guess this is my seventh budget. It's a very difficult process to go through. And until we decide in this community to come together, you know, as Ms. Smith had said, you know, it's not that anyone's trying to be a freeloader or anyone's trying to get away with this or that. We all have to do the things that are necessary in our community. We have to spend money in our community. We have to reinvest in our community. And when we decide that we're all going to do that and pull together, we won't have problems like we do now. Things are going to get better. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Hurley, you had your light on a moment ago.
I'll pass. I think it's been addressed.
Okay. Councilmember Sutton will have the floor in just a moment. Once he speaks, if there's no other discussion on the motion, we'll go ahead and take a vote on that, and then we'll take a 10-minute break. I see some people kind of squirming a little bit, and a 10-minute break I think would be welcome. But between now and that break, Councilmember Sutton, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to also thank the people that spoke. Thank you for speaking. And I just would encourage, there's a lot of people here that would be good to hear from too. I just encourage each of you that are in the room to consider speaking up more and speaking out on some of these things. These are difficult issues. This budget is a very difficult budget. And I just encourage you to continue to give us your input because we do need it. I just had a technical point that I wanted to find out from the city manager. In Mrs. Powell's discussion that she gave us tonight, she mentioned that there was a step plan in place for the firemen and the police too, and that this was analogous to the military that gets regular step plan increases, that this is an automatic part of the budget. And I'm wondering, has the fire department or the police department or both of them made agreements with the employees that they would receive these regardless of the budget that they would have these step plan increases regardless of the budget?
No, sir. That's dealt with on a year-to-year basis at budget time with the adoption of the budget. There's no long-term commitment or requirement beyond one fiscal year at a time.
So none of the firemen were given a commitment that they would receive a step plan as a part of their career path whenever they were hired?
Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but Jonita, are you aware of something?
You want to repeat what she said with people on TV?
Jonita. Could Jonita come up to the microphone, please?
We could hear you, but the people on TV couldn't hear you. I'm sorry, Jonita.
I said, no, sir, it's not considered to be a condition of employment. When someone is offered a job, and certainly in my dealing with them, they are not given a written contract or an oral contract of some kind of a guaranteed employment contract of sorts where it's a condition of employment, from my knowledge.
Okay, thank you. And And that's all the comments I have, but I notice there is a citizen that is raising their hands like they want to speak.
Okay, we don't normally, once the public hearing is closed, allow additional input with the consent of the council. Mr. Powell, we need your name and address for the record. And I would assume you want to address us on the subject we've just been discussing. And you might, if you would, tell us your position with Haltom City.
I'm a firefighter paramedic in Haltom City. I live at 4920 Saucer Drive. No, there is not a written commitment upon getting hired, like y'all are saying. But when we are hired, each of you got my paper that I put in your box this past week, and it has a step plan on there. And as you can see on the step plan, it has it laid out, year by year, what our increase would be. And this is to get a top-out pay that we're supposed to reach after, I believe, 8 years. And no, we don't have a written commitment, but we're going by the honor of the city that hires us and shows us that you're going to be topped out in 8 years, and this is how we're going to get you there. And each of you have a copy of that. If you could look at it, I would appreciate it. That's all I really have to say.
Councilmember Fowler, did you have
a question for
comment
Mr.
for
Powell?
Yes,
Yes, sir. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
That's okay.
do you feel like that the pay, you as a fireman here, do you feel like that the step plan for, understanding the situation that we're all in, I don't know that our military received a pay increase this year. I don't know about that budget, but okay. Oh, that's right, President Bush. No, I'm sorry.
Where's Dewey?
Please go ahead.
But I'm sorry.
Mr. Fowler.
Do you feel like that it would produce a better environment for y'all for the step plan? Understanding that if we did that, we'd have to probably cut at least 2 positions. Or would we better serve our citizens, and would y'all be better served and protect each other having the 2 additional firefighters?
Well, we would better serve the citizens to keep our firemen, and But I mean, it also goes to where we still have nearly almost $2 million in savings from what I saw. Just to have your employees back the city and talk good about the city and be proud of where they work at, you would think just to make this up, the city would stand by their word and back their police and fire on this.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. If you will, register your vote. And that passes with 1 dissenting vote, and you have that recorded.
Yes, Mayor, I do.
Okay, let's take about 10 minutes. Let's be back at 10 after 9, and we'll proceed with item number 12.
Go catch him. Hurry.
Adequate levels of police and fire services, street maintenance services, and recreational services to the general public. The proposed rate is 6.52 cents higher than the current rate of 45.575 cents per $100 of valuation. That increase is estimated to generate $837,000 of additional property tax revenue. This tax rate increase is the first increase in Haltom City in almost 10 years, since 1994, when the tax rate was set at a peak at that time of 48.290 cents. Since that last increase in 1994, tax rates have been reduced on 3 separate occasions: 1995, 1996, and the year 2000. This proposed increase is necessary to counter extraordinary declines over the past 3 years in other sources of revenue that have also supported the general fund. Something a lot of people forget is the general fund is a $14 million budget, and the property tax is only about 25% of the revenue source there. These changes in revenue have include a $598,000 decline in sales tax revenues over the past 3 years, a $100,000 decline in permit fees over the past 3 years, and a $780,000 decline in fines and fees. We did post a quarter-page, ad in accordance with the state tax laws with regard to this item that was published in the Star-Telegram on August the 15th. And after this action is taken tonight, there will be an additional and final quarter-page ad published in the Star-Telegram announcing to the public that a public hearing was held and that a final vote on this tax rate will be conducted on September the 8th at 7:30 p.m. at this location. With that said, I'll answer any questions, or perhaps members of the council may wish to say something in this regard.
Yeah, members of the council, before I open the public hearing regarding the setting of the tax rate, any questions or comments for Mr. Elfrink? Mr. Torres, any comments from you regarding this item?
No, sir, I'm fine. There may be some questions that come up as a result of the public hearing.
Okay. We move now to the public hearing, and I'll open the public hearing at this time. Is there any member or members of the audience who wish to address the council regarding the tax rate as presented by Mr. Elfrink? Okay, there being none, I'll close the public hearing at this time, and we move now to the corresponding ordinance set to approve the tax rate for fiscal year 2003-2004. Councilmember Averett?
Mayor, I make a motion we approve agenda item number 12 and the corresponding ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second? Councilmember Hurley. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Okay, there being none, if you'll display your vote, if you'll register your vote, I'll display it. And that passes. Ms. Staub, you have that recorded?
I do, Mayor, thank you.
It passes 6 in favor and 1 opposing vote. Okay, we've already discussed item number 13 and 14. We move to item number 15, and Mr. Elfrink believes the monthly financial report for July 2003 is your item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report for the month ending July 31st, 2003 represents completion of 83% of the fiscal year. The figures that are in this report on the left-hand side of the pages that have the numerical schedules represent the adopted budget. I believe that after this month you will see that change to the estimated year end, so it corresponds with the budget that we have just approved. A couple of particular items for the general fund. We had our first experience selling equipment of the cities that's been declared surplus. We sold a fire truck on an internet auction and received $28,782 last month for that fire truck. We think that this will, and also the percentage fee for this auctioneer online was about 2% less than the percentage fee for the auctioneer that we use locally that we deliver this equipment to in the past. We are commencing a sales tax audit to verify the retail outlets of all of our sales tax producers in Haltom City, and we are also just past the contract signing stage for a warrant collection contract where an outside firm will attempt to serve a number of the outstanding warrants that we have, and this will not cost us any revenue. State law was recently changed, so the cost of serving these warrants will be passed on completely to the individual who has incurred those warrants against them. Moving ahead rather quickly through this because I really don't have anything of great significance to report, I'll skip ahead to the investment report and simply report to the council that we currently have $19,032,000 invested in the city's portfolio. We're doing our best to achieve the highest interest earnings rate. We had a recent, as required by state law, investment committee meeting where we approved the purchase of some additional federal instruments that we will hold for a little bit longer time instead of having our money in these very flexible and liquid money market pools. By buying these federal instruments, treasury notes, we hope to earn a little bit better rate of interest. That's about all I have on this report. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them.
Councilmember Fowler?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. L. Frank, under city sales tax.
Yes, sir.
Showing 71%.
Yes.
Of previous budget. I know you're saying we're 83% complete in the year, so we're down by what, some 12%?
That's 73.
71%.
71% is compared to the adopted budget of $4,120,000, and as I think I mentioned in the pre-council, the ending year budget has been revised to $3,314,000. So I think it's a little bit closer to about a little over 80% of that $3,300,000 number. And as I said earlier, we'll be changing in these last two reports of the year that you received, now that we've had the first approval of this revised budget for this year, the document that we just passed. The adopted budget column in this report will be changed to show that our current year-end estimates.
So next month's forecast should be reflected of the revised budget.
Revised figure, right. And compared to the revised figure, I think we're in the neighborhood of a little over 80% that we've collected. We still have 3 more months of sales tax revenue to collect.
Okay, but what do we anticipate being below the adopted budget from last year?
It looks like it's a little over $800,000.
What percentage is that low?
I would just guess it's a little over 20%.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Williams?
Mr. Al Frank, on the 26,000, you say?
For the fire truck, yes, sir.
Did we apply that toward the new Quint, the payment on it, or what do we do?
The way that money's received, it actually just goes into the general pool of funds in the general fund. It's not really designated in that manner.
But it came out of the fire department's budget when they bought it?
Came out of the general funds budget. We probably bought it using debt money. It probably did not. No, I would say it did not come out of the fire department. It was debt service. I'm sure we issued debt to buy that fire truck.
Okay, are we planning on selling any more equipment that way, cars, trucks, motorcycles?
Because of the fact that it was so easy to do, we didn't have to deliver the equipment to a location. All we had to do were take some digital pictures and send it to this auctioneer. And also the auctioneer charged us, I think it was 8% commission instead of what the local person has been charging us is 10% commission.
How's that compared to eBay?
I haven't any idea. I've never looked at eBay myself. This is a internet auction site that is geared towards cities. I'll be glad to share the address with you. You will see the logos and items from many cities in this area participating in this site. I think by using a site that is geared towards municipal surplus properties, it's probably a little more effective than just throwing it out there on eBay.
I know the piece of equipment we were talking about, and I was very surprised at the amount of money. I think we'd probably sold it through our local auctioneer here. We might have been lucky to get $5,000 for it.
I wanted to drive it around town with a for sale sign in it, but Jerry wouldn't let me. I'm afraid.
I'm kind of upset that we didn't keep it till after Christmas, but we could use it in the Christmas parade.
Possibly, yes.
But I would like to look deeper into this on some of the other equipment we have to sell, not only as far as rolling equipment, but maybe some stuff in public works when we replace stuff there.
Yeah, almost any large equipment item is suitable for this type of auction. Again, because it's very cost effective and it's not labor intensive. We don't have to deliver the item someplace to have people inspect it and so forth and so on.
Right.
They come to if they're interested, they come to our location.
We just sell it as is, where is, come get it.
Pretty much, yeah.
If it breaks in half, you get both pieces.
Sure.
Just like we do. All right.
Anything further, Councilmember Williams? Any further questions for Mr. Elfrey? Okay, we do need a motion for approval or for acceptance of this financial report. Councilmember Henderson?
Move to approve the financial report.
Councilmember Sutton?
That's for a second.
We have a motion to approve, register your vote, and it shows unanimous approval. Item number 16 is our capital improvement status report. Assistant City Manager Tom Muir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before I start with the CIP report, I just wanted to state that when Mr. Francis was up here talking about a lot of the streets that needed work, some of the streets he mentioned are referenced in the report and are referenced in our budget as streets that we're going to be dealing with. So just wanted to let that be known to the citizens. We start off, as always, with Broadway. If you haven't driven it in the last couple of weeks, you need to. The whole north side is open. Paving is on the south side. They're concentrating on it now, but project should be complete by November. But knock on wood. The milling and the overlay. The Haltom Road overlay projects are going to be starting here sometime this week, starting with concrete work. That'll last for a couple of weeks. The entire finish out project with the overlay project should be complete by the end of early October, as will all the other overlay projects that are listed there, which include Starlight and Diamond Oaks. Drainage projects, the only thing I really want to highlight there is the Midway Bridge. The bridge is basically finished. The water main that we did a change order for a few weeks ago, that's the only component left. That should be finished by the end of September, so hopefully that bridge will be opened up shortly, around that time or shortly thereafter. In sanitary sewer work, the Big Fossil Creek Drainage Project, Basin Project Phase 2, which is being done by Circle C, it's about 60% complete and is on schedule. And the manhole rehab project performed by Enviro Remediation is 45% complete and is also on schedule. I'll finish up with the building projects. The Public Works project is, or the Municipal Service Center project, we'll say. The Public Works facility, the office, the administrative office, is progressing very, very well. We did hit a little snag with some electricity issues, but that's been overcome. The outside is pretty much finished out. The inside is what's left. They're going to be starting on the floors and the interior finishes as we speak this week, but hopefully we'll be moving in there in about another 3 weeks, 4 weeks. The rec center, we've got some steel up, got some slab down. There is an issue with the existing slab that we're still evaluating with the structural engineer, but that's presenting a problem that we'll address with the council in the future as we get more input from the structural engineer. On the Central Fire Station, if you haven't been by it lately, I'd encourage you to go by there. The steel, there's a lot of steel up now in the last week that you really get a feel for what that facility is gonna be, and it's very exciting to see that. That is still proceeding. It's a little behind. It's a couple of weeks behind schedule. It should be finished by the end of the year. And with that, that completes the report.
Questions or comments regarding the capital improvement status? Councilmember Sutton.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Muir, in the drainage portion of your report where you're talking about the Big Fossil Creek Consortium Study Project, if a citizen is concerned and wants to follow some of the progress of this, where would be the best place for a citizen to find out or see the design issues that the Corps of Engineers are facing right now in regards to this project?
There are posted some periodic meetings that the Corps does probably every 2 to 3 months. It is still so very, very early in this process. The Corps is really dealing with just schematics right now. Very rough schematics, but if they do want to have more input, they need to contact my office, and when those meetings are made, we'll let them know and let them be a part of it.
So your office would be a good point to contact.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Williams and then Councilmember Hurley.
Thank you, Mr. Muir. Can you tell me anything that's going on Waldemar, Bernice, Belknap? Looks like Oklahoma.
I believe the when I followed up on that message you left me earlier, I think that's some work at Circle C, the sanitary sewer work. I think that's something they're doing, and we're pursuing that with them to see if what the status is on that. Exactly what that is, I'm not in a position to say right now.
That's I hate to say the Waldemar Apartments are the gateway to the Senior Citizen Center, but that's caused quite a problem the last 3 weeks. People getting in, getting out of there, as well as Elatar Auto Sales right there on the corner of Belknap and Waldemar. I drove down there this morning to the Senior Citizen Center. They had a track loader.
Okay.
Track backhoe. What is that, Trey?
Track backhoe.
Track hoe. It's a big old piece of equipment, had a deal dug down in dirt and had tracks on it. It was sitting out in the middle of the street. They've got red dirt from one end to the other. It's a mess. I don't know if that's the way they intend to leave it when they're through.
No.
I hope not.
No.
But as far as it is right now, it looks bad.
Okay.
I know construction does look bad, but I think that could be a little neater workplace than what they got it. And with our senior citizens going in and out of there, it poses quite a problem driving through there.
And we'll see what we can do to address that with the engineering department.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Councilmember Hurley.
Councilman Sutton can attend the meeting September the 10th at, what time has it been, at 6:30 at the library?
6:30. Yeah.
The Big Fossil Watershed Advisory Board will be meeting down there, and it'll be close enough. You can probably get briefed on it pretty thoroughly.
That meeting he's referencing is a joint meeting of the policymaking folks and the technical committee, so it'd be a very good time.
Thank you. This was also for other people that requested what was going on with this project. So
it's an open meeting. They're
great.
welcome to attend.
They'll be glad to know that.
Anything further for Mr. Muir? Thank you, Mr. Muir. We move to item number 17, resignations. Ladies and gentlemen, any resignations from our boards and commissions? We move to item number 18, appointment and reappointment to boards or commissions. Councilmember Williams.
I have an appointment to the Fire Service Board. Ronald J. Porter. His address is 3217 Field Street, Haltom City. Mr. Porter has been a resident of the city for 55 years and is recently retired after 31 years of service with our fire department. Pardon? Retired. He don't work here no more. He's retired, 31 years of service here, and I think he'll be an asset to that board. I got an English grammar nut over here.
We have a nomination or an appointment. We need ratification. If you'll cast your vote for ratification for Mr. Porter. And that is by unanimous vote. Item number 19 is attendance requirement. That's not an issue tonight. All of us are here. We move now into closed session as authorized by the Government Code Section 551.071, .072, .074. And we'll come back in open session to take action on any item that comes out of executive session. Ladies and gentlemen, the time is 12:08. The council is reconvened in open session. There is no action to be taken on any item discussed in executive session. Therefore, the council stands adjourned.